All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Running solo today, believe it or not. So it's my main man, Crossy, can't be here for this ep, which is unfortunate, but I'm running it solo. But I'm really excited around this one. I'm just going to dive straight deep with Todd Sloan.
Mate, thank you so much for having me here.
The Todd Sloan. And this is going to be a good one because, I mean, I've done a one-on-one with you on your podcast, the Pizza and Property podcast, which we'll touch on in a second. But I feel I'm sure Crossy would have had some absolute cracking questions, but I'm actually keen to chat to you just like we're having a brew or a coffee, mate, because I think one-on-one like this, we can go a little deep with some of the property stuff. And I'm actually very curious around this book you're writing at the moment. I'm super keen to find out more. So, mate, thanks for popping on.
Mate, thanks you for having me. I think I jumped in too early with the thank you for having me.
No. and mate, from Adelaide, so
it's been a big drive.
Mate, that's where people come to get on this show, right? No, in all seriousness, you're obviously on a bit of a journey right now with your book, which we'll touch on. So super exciting. We can do this in person. So I guess the first thing I always start off with, Todd, is like a bit about you. Anyone who doesn't know you, Pizza and Property podcast, that's pretty much your full-time gig now. So it's one of my favourite podcasts out there at the moment for any, not just buyers, investors, people looking to sharpen up their knowledge in property, learn from the best. I think Pizza and Property with Todd Sloan is hand on heart one of the best ones going out there in Australia right now. So congrats on making a full-time gig as well. That's epic.
I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you.
Yeah. No, it's been good. So, but behind that, how did you get into doing the podcasting full-time? And obviously you've got a journey with property as well. Like, where did it all start? It sounds like where you're from even.
You know, how far back do you want me to go?
Let's go. Where I know you're from Adelaide, is that right? Yeah.
Yes, from Adelaide.
What'd you do after school? So you left school, and then where'd you end up going?
I'll try and make this like 2 to 3 minutes. So basically left school, went to film school, really enjoyed that, but then didn't like it because I kind of figured out I can just make these movies. Like I don't need to actually keep doing it. So then I started producing a TV show, started pitching it everywhere. They just saw a 19-year-old kid with stars in his eyes and just said like, we'll give you stuff, but not money. So I basically went, okay, I'll do this myself. Went to the mines, thought I'll just pay for it myself. Read actually was a Donald Trump book, Donald Trump 101. And turns out this is before Trump is what he is now. This was when he was still like just the real estate developer. And it basically gave me the idea of you're either going to make it smashingly huge following that media career or eat beans on toast. This is all pre what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
You couldn't do this. This is in 2006. YouTube didn't even, or maybe it existed, but it wasn't what it is. And I just went, I'm not too happy about this. And the second book I read was Steve McKnight's book, 0 to 260 in 7 years. Yeah. That lit a spark that laid very dormant for a long time because I ended up then having an accident on a drill rig, couldn't walk properly for almost 4 years. I'm really speeding through this.
Yeah, no.
Then basically I refer to them now as my professional alcoholic years. So I stupidly, I was like, I don't want to take pain meds because everyone told me they're addictive. So I just went down to the local, it was called Red Square, like the local club, and just went, let's just take all other kinds of pain relief, let's call it, and just would drink stupid amounts of alcohol.
Really? Yeah, okay.
And that was my life for like 4 years because like, I had 3 bulging discs between my T6 and T11, so it's thoracic, and 2 facet joints out of place. So I was in constant, like proper pain. But that was the blessing in disguise with that was I then walked from Adelaide to Melbourne and again.
Walked?
Yeah, walked from Adelaide to Melbourne.
On foot?
Yeah. It was like a charity thing, but it'd been something that I just wanted to do since I was younger. Came from another story of me and a friend walking the Southern Expressway with bottles of Southern Comfort each. And basically just that was like the turning point of like what else is possible, because like it's an 800 kilometer walk. Like it's not a stroll.
It's a fair stroll, yeah.
Yeah. And I did that and that sort of opened up my eyes to, well, what else can I do? Then I rode a bike from Darwin to Adelaide. I did that in 2 weeks as well. Most people do it in 4 to 6 weeks. So it was about 200 kilometers a day.
Jeez.
And that's when I started turning my attention to like property investing. Because I also realized like the first one I raised about 10 grand, next one I raised about 20 grand. And I started thinking, well, if I can reno, like I can make more money. I can build something to one day build myself into something that can really make a difference. And that's more a part of the plan now. And I think that's probably took more than 2 minutes, but that's probably the best kind of wrap up.
Mate, that's unreal. So just pulling back a bit quickly on the so you had an accident in the rigs. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, when I was drilling, and it's just the stupidest thing. It's just what gets said, what needs to be done, and what's actually done are two very different things. I had the "Are you sure this is the career for you?" conversation a few times when I pulled them up on, "Hey, aren't we supposed to be doing it this way?" And when you're drilling, like proper, I did underground drilling, which is very different, but then I went back and actually drilled on the surface, and you're not even at a mine. So a mine's already pretty remote. Sat phones don't even work. You're the second stage of the mining process. The first stage is they fly a plane over with a special camera in it that sort of senses roughly where the minerals are and what's going on at the ground. The next stage is they send in diamond drillers or exploration drillers. And diamond driller just sounds cooler. It used to work better when I was single telling girls I was a diamond driller. But you then start just basically drilling holes in the ground all different kinds of ways. One day I was pulling one of basically you're supposed to put this thing called the butt plug in, which you kept a much better straight face than Mike Mortlock did when I said that to him the other day. And just pull the rod out. That's the safe way to do it. And then you put it on the rack. But you don't. Again, it's what you're supposed to do, what you did. And I lifted this HQ rod out, which is like a 3 meter rod. I don't even know what it weighs, like 50, 60, 70 kilos. Like it's a fair bit of weight. Maybe not even that much, but it's a lot. But I did it bending all the way down. Not going to do it now because I'll get out of sound. And I just felt this pop in my back.
Jeez.
And that was the moment, but realistically it was probably lots of things, but that was like the definitive kind of this isn't right. And I thought I was going to be out for a couple of weeks, and I'm thinking like, oh shit, what if I don't have a couple of weeks pay and this is bad, and didn't know it was going to turn into 4 years of everything changed.
Jeez. Yeah. Wow. And then, as you said, that would have been a really tough sort of moment. And then did those sorts of walks and charity things sort of, I am a lot injured or sore, and you're kind of like, all right, I want to do these things to prove to myself that I'm capable. Like, is that kind of what it was? Or
I think a bit of that, like, because like walking, like I could walk, just to make it really clear. Like I wasn't in a wheelchair, but I walked with a limp. I walked super slowly just because every step was pain. And so as soon as I could walk properly again, that's when it changed, and it almost was like this novelty had returned. It's like if someone, like you're a pretty fit dude, you probably don't smash the carbs, and then like if you're going keto for a while and someone puts a pizza in front of you, it's the best damn pizza you've ever had.
Yeah.
Like I think it was kind of a bit of that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, wow. And then where did that end up then? Like, so you've done a few of those and you're feeling a bit more, you've got a plan in life. Where did you end up professionally after that?
So then I became an agent.
Real estate, like on the sales side?
Sales side.
Okay, yep.
So that was 2015. So I did that.
Which market?
In Adelaide market.
Adelaide,
yep. Sorry. Yeah. Cool. Joined a company called Tim's Real Estate. They were fantastic. But I took ages to find my feet.
Yep.
I got the hard word 3 times of just hey, we really like you. We want you to stay. But if you don't make a listing, well, you used to be a sales. Yeah. You don't list something in the next week.
It's a grind.
Like, there's the door, man.
Yeah.
I was like, shit. And you just always happen to find that listing then.
Just at the right time, mate.
Yeah. And I actually got saved by a colleague once. And they called me like, oh, remember that one that we appraised together? I'm like, I didn't appraise this. And like, shut up, Todd. Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Like without her, I probably wouldn't have still been in that job as well.
Yeah.
But I think she had a bit of a soft spot for me and could see that I had a bit of potential. And so did Valerie. Like she's wonderful.
Yep.
But yeah, stayed in that. But eventually my heart just wasn't in it the same way.
How long were you an agent for? Roughly
2015 to mid 2022, so 7.5 years.
Oh wow, yeah. So you end up getting a few more listings, obviously. Then
got a few more. Yeah. I was never like a superstar.
Yeah.
But I never wanted to be.
Yeah.
Because I kind of did the numbers on it, and again, you'd know this. Like the people that are writing like $2-3 million, a lot of the time they're building huge teams.
Yes.
And I wasn't in a market where you could really do that. Like my average comm was like 11.
Yeah.
Like, whereas when you look at like the Rubensteins and them, their average comm's probably like 50, 60, 70.
Yeah.
Like it's different.
It's different.
And I didn't want to scale and put on like that many PAs. At one point I had, did I get to 2? No, just 1. I had 1 and started growing, and I was like, I'm going to focus on renovating instead.
Yeah.
It made more sense for me.
As in like your own stuff?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
My own portfolio.
Okay. So then obviously that exposure to real estate and whatnot, obviously got the bug in there. you're looking at doing renovations yourself. Take us through your portfolio journey and where did it start? What was that like? What age? What was your income? And then tell us a bit around the journey with your personal life.
So it was 2017, would have been mid to possibly even late 2017.
So you sort of mid-career kind of thing? Yeah.
Yep. And I was at the stage when I'd finished the ride and I think I was looking for something else, and a mate of mine had actually just moved up to Cairns. We were renting this cool little penthouse together, and the lifestyle-wise, it was awesome. Like I still wasn't making any money, but I lived in this cool little, like, apartment in town and loved it. But then it kind of hit me once he moved out. I was like, well, I can keep paying all this like exorbitant rent, a lot of rent, or I can start sacrificing, because it's kind of hit me of like, what am I doing? Like I had one apartment that I bought when I was 21. It had hardly gone up. I bought it for 280, ended up selling it in 2016 for like 340 or something. It was the classic story of everything you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And just end up going, look, what else can I do to make my income better and make it better for the bank? So I called up mum and was like, hey, how would you like a cook? Like, and actually worked out well, like, because mum was at a stage of her life then where she was kind of going through a few things, and she just wasn't really eating that well. I think she was a little bit lonely. So it was actually really nice in a way. Like, to a certain extent, I was then a young man in his early 30s moving back in with mum. Like, you don't do it for the cool points, that's for sure.
Yep.
But then to the banks, all of a sudden, I could borrow a bit.
You borrow, yeah.
And not only that, but then I could save a bit more. And because I was only on like 38 grand a year, like I said, it took me a while to find my feet with real estate. Like, realistically, and I've said this to Valerie before, I would have fired me. I actually wouldn't have given me the amount of chances she did. It ended up working out, but I was a risk. And eventually I found my feet with it. But then I bought the first property. I just knew all I wanted to do was add value, because I didn't have enough to go again with my own serviceability or the savings wise, and I wanted it to be positively geared. So I found a deal regionally, which if I couldn't add value, because I always get asked about this one, I would not have purchased it. I got it for 62 grand or 62 and a half, and basically spent about 30 on it, and I got revalued for about 125. So it was just a little bit, but it was enough to go, all right, I can go again now. And it was positively geared, rented for $220 a week or something like that.
I just want to touch on there, Todd, because a lot of the audience, this segment's really into, it could be first time investors or people on a lower income who make the excuse around not being able to service or buy. A few key takeaways I took out of that little section there is, if you're moving home, it isn't, stroke to the ego to some, but it depends on what your goal is, right? Because it is it's a good move for banks. If you're in a position where you want to get in, you're struggling to get into maybe your first investment or get some serviceability back, and you're in a position where that could be a move for you, it's quite attractive from the bank side of things. And the second part of that I really liked around adding value. So just quickly touch on that. What did you mean by adding value? I'm assuming something where it wasn't the shiny taps and all that. You sort of wanted to cosmetically renovate it yourself. Is that right? That's
been the flavor through every single property, apart from the most recent one which was a block of units that I purchased. I haven't renovated that yet, but this one was one of those deals that you couldn't really replicate it. It was just right place, right time. And it wasn't even the agent's listing that actually showed it to me. And it was basically a house that had been trucked in, and they went bankrupt before they could put in a septic tank, connect mains water, and they actually needed to put a power pole out the front, like proper everything needed to be connected. And so it'd been sitting there for, I think it was between 2011 and 2017, so like 6 years. And they wanted 75. I think I got it under contract for 76 and a half, but then I renegotiated partway through with the finance clause, which is something else we can touch on. But another $5,000 down to like the 62. And I just remember looking at this thinking, it's a 3-bed, 2-bath on almost 2,000 square meters. All of the comp sales were well and truly in the kind of low to mid ones. I thought it's not going to cost me anywhere near that to get that up to that standard, and ended up costing me about sort of $30,000. And most of that was putting a power pole out the front, like putting in the septic tank. So it's not actually stuff I was doing. It was stuff I was kind of organizing. So it was almost like development as far as those side of things, but I wouldn't call it a development.
I get you. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. And then you're sort of like, all right, got that revaled. Did you extract equity? And were you in the mindset of you wanted to build a portfolio? Were you 100%. Just all in with it? Yeah.
And if you had to talk to me, even before I started that, like, and this was the weird thing. This is probably where the podcast was like a real blessing for me. That before I actually started doing it, I was that guy. You always see him in the comments section on like Facebook groups. They do nothing and they know everything. And that was totally me. I'd read like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad and then just give unsolicited advice to everyone on how they should be like investing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I actually started doing it that I'm like, wow, some of my advice was really bad. Like just shut your mouth sometimes and realize that your way isn't the only way. It's just your way. Which again is one of the parts with the book and the reasoning behind that. But I really just wanted to grow a portfolio because I knew that I didn't want to be stuck in work and I wanted choice. That was the major thing. And I thought if I could grow something bigger, then I could build that.
So it's the underlying why, right? The choice and freedom to do. And that's why me and you know a few investors in the space. That's generally the main reason, isn't it?
Most of the time.
Yeah. And then what did it look like from there? You're all in. You made some money on that first deal.
Mm-hmm.
What changed throughout the journey, and where did you start putting your money? Where you're like, all right, I'm going to start investing here, or you became better in a certain area. Like, what did that look like then? What was the journey?
Well, for me, it was always just looking for the deal. So the next one was, all right, I actually stupidly bought it with a very fresh relationship. Totally shouldn't have. Made sense at the time logically, but shouldn't have done
Always
it.
does, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and she was a lovely girl. It was just, we're not a fit. It's one of those kind of situations. So we still made money out of it, but, and this is what benefit of hindsight frustrated me, is I could have done it quicker because she never wanted me to go there by myself. It was always like, we have to do this. And I also didn't need her money. Like I could have done that by myself. So then when I revowed, I had to pay her half the equity.
Pay half. Yeah.
So I think we made, I bought it for 110. And again, this is semi-regional. And then spent 9 on it. And I think we got it revowed for 165. So then I had to give her part of the difference. So then going into the next one, then that's when I revowed again. And I just kept having these tiny little limits until recently. That's when I could spend up to $1 million when I got the unit block. But otherwise it was just always super restrictive. So I would have liked to have been in certain areas. That would have been nice. But unless it could show me how this one was going to get me to that one, I wasn't interested.
Yeah, I like that. Key tip there, I really like that because I see a lot of investors closed-minded, right? They want to get into property, but they're segmented by something they've read or seen, or they're like, I want to just get in that location. So they delay the process of it for, could be 5-10 years. But I've seen a key tip for buyers who want to get on the investing train early is look at different avenues. Like I always say, your income dictates where you're going to buy location-wise, right? So you're someone who's hungry. You looked at your servicing and your income and you're just like, all right, that's going to lead me there. I'm looking for deals in that area because one of my favorite sayings is a lot of people always ask, where's the best place to buy or when's the best place? If there's a deal, there's a deal.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you can safely afford it and it makes sense from a deal point of view, you act on the opportunity. And it sounds like I like how you were renovating to manufacture your own equity, pulling out and going again. And it sounds like you're slowly trying to build your way to where you want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
What did it look like after that then? You just kept trying to pull out equity, go again. Was that always a strategy? Same strategy?
Exactly, yeah. Then I renovated a bigger house. Actually, not a bigger house, but a bigger reno. The way that I describe it is light cosmetic versus heavy cosmetic. So the ones beforehand were like, I'd put in a kitchen, but it was just more so paint the bathroom, remove the vanity. Whereas now I'm taking out walls. I'm completely gutting like kitchens, bathrooms, everything. Like it's, I wouldn't class that as structural, but it's like the one step below structural. Yeah.
You're not fully, yeah.
Yeah.
And are you selling anything on this journey so far?
No. The only thing that got sold was the very first unit that I purchased and didn't really walk away with that much profit. And to be honest, I I kind of drank a bit of it anyway. Like I wasn't making good choices, man. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
But that was the only one I've ever sold, which I would sell to restructure now. But again, it would have to be I'm selling because
you're
it
getting
now
in
frees.
a
Exactly.
better opportunity.
Otherwise, I don't see the point.
Yep, love it. And then where'd you head? So we're at 3. Is that 3 properties so far? And then where'd you go after that?
Then ended up going up to Queensland.
Yep.
Getting a few there. Then going back down to Adelaide, getting another unit renovation there. Then going back up to Cairns and buying the unit block.
Nice.
And yeah, that's where we're sitting now. And I got that just before I left as well because I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing.
Yep.
I just knew that the podcast was growing quite rapidly, and this was still just my like 5 a.m. to 8 o'clock kind of work.
Yep.
And it ended up hitting me. It's like, if that's what I can do with part focus, like what's it capable of if I really go all in? And so I built the passive income for the portfolio up to around, I think it was about 65, 70 grand a year before rates started rising. Now it's probably closer to like sort of 55-ish. Naturally, that's been shaved a bit. But I live pretty cheap. Like this is actually the most expensive t-shirt I've bought in ages.
It's a nice shirt, by the way. Yeah.
And it feels nice. I got Charlie Valler told me about it.
Yeah.
It's actually from Lululemon. It cost me $60. He's like, you have to buy this t-shirt. I'm like, dude, I normally spend $3.75 on my shirts at Kmart.
Mate, I love it. One thing I'm picking up is that sort of minimalist lifestyle, but because right there, like, let's just quickly run rough figures, right? So you started on a 30-something grand income.
Yep.
Right? And you've built up a portfolio. What would the portfolio be roughly, circa-wise, you think?
Now, probably just a bit over 3.
Unreal. And from 2017 to
now. Yep.
2017, 18, 19, 20.
Yeah. But
unreal.
Let's be honest as well. The market's done a bit of the heavy lifting there for me as well.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't be there. It'd probably be closer to like 2.22 or something. But still.
Yeah, I still think, to be able to, again, doing what you could have done with, like, just say you peel back and you tapped out, right? And you waited until you could get like the $1 million asset first. You're probably still waiting, you know, you might have one in your portfolio, but you've been able to slowly build it, you know, a few properties under your belt now, and you've got a bit of passive income, and it sounds like you're doing something you love as well. You know, you're not really tied into a job you hate because you've got this huge overarching debt somewhere, you know. I just really respect people who take action even if, you know, they're going against the grain, right? Yeah. Was there many people you're talking to during this journey?
At the start, just the standard kind of like the same advice that I would give, the unsolicited, uneducated kind of advice. But always very well intentioned. Like no one's an arse when they're doing that. Yep. They mean good, which I think is why that's so dangerous, because it never comes from an asshole you don't trust. It usually comes from a friend or family member that's nice. But yeah, then the podcast came in 2019. We started that, and then it was all of the conversations I was having with guests that I remember being dumbfounded, like just thinking I'd never get access to these people. Like these microphones they're freaking gold.
It's unreal.
Because you just call someone up. It's like, hey, can I just talk to you? It's like, who are you? But it's like, hey, can you come on my podcast? It's like, oh yeah, I guess.
You're exactly right, mate. And we'll touch on the podcast shortly because, mate, some of the guests you've had are some of the, mate, I that's what I mean. I love your podcast, not only because you're a great interviewer, but, mate, some of the guests are unreal. Stacks of knowledge.
I couldn't believe Chris Voss said yes.
Chris Voss, that's huge. Anyone who doesn't know Chris Voss, he's one of the best. He's got the book, We'll Never Split the Difference. It's a New York Times bestseller. Yeah. Like crazy. Like, yeah, he's one of the best negotiators in the world. So, and just quickly on the property, because I just love that story, because as I said, I didn't know your journey before chatting. That's why I really like it. Where do you want to go with the portfolio? Like, are you still seeing the portfolio as something that's funding so you can have more choice and just do things and do things like what you've been doing, go write a book, get on the road kind of thing? Like, what's your ultimate goal, you think, with the portfolio?
The portfolio, Bianca and I have been talking about that a lot lately, because like she's got her own as well. Like we don't mix assets as such. We were talking about this on the drive between, I think it was Melbourne and Sydney just a few days ago, that originally the portfolio goal was 20 million. And I think if I'm honest, it was probably more of an ego goal than anything. And so we started getting like you have like those D&M chats when you've got like 10 hours of driving.
Oh, love that.
And it was good. And what we worked out was a $10 million portfolio on a 50-50 LVR on a 6% interest P&I. That would produce roughly, if it was yielding 7%, because all of my properties are very high yielding. Like the unit block's 8.7, the other units are like 8 and 9. So at 7, I was like, that can work. That produced $200,000 a year passive income, and that to me was like 50-50 LVR. It's not untouchable, but that's very safe.
It's very safe. Very safe. Yeah.
And I liked that, and that's like the focus, because now I'm like, okay, well, now essentially I need to create whatever that is, like $3.5, $4 million worth of equity. Yeah, three and a bit. But either way, it's like there's this focused goal. And I think that's really good with goals. A lot of people say just completely shoot for the stars. And whilst I've definitely done that with certain things, I think sometimes it's good to go like, here's the bigger one, but now let's chop that up. And I feel like that's kind of what this is doing, because 3 felt impossible. 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Actually, no, not 2. 2, it felt a bit more in the realms, but 4 years ago, I would never have thought I would be sitting here chatting with you, mate. But now it's like, okay, 20 still feels a bit like, oh, yeah, should be able to happen. But 10's like, no, I can do that. And I think it's this little blind confidence that it's like I'm a skydiver. I haven't skydived in a while, but I got my A license years ago, and it's a wonderful sport, and it's very misunderstood. And I remember talking to one of the guys there at the drop zone once, and he's said that most skydivers have this little balance of stupidity and intelligence, because it's like if you're so intelligent, you talk your way out of it and be like, no, this is crazy, I won't do this. But if you're too stupid, you don't last very long.
Yeah.
But if you've got a little bit of that balance, and I think that blind faith kind of comes into that when you're building a portfolio as well. Because if you told me to just logically lay out every single step I'm going to take to 10 million, I can't tell you that. But I just know I'm going to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I like that you've set a target as well, because often a lot of investors on that train to where they want to go, like, will just keep going. Or I like how you've set up a passive income goal, right? And then you've worked backwards from your current portfolio. It's really, really smart, and it's a key takeaway there for people in the investment spaces, having a look at, I guess, your family situation, your disposable income, what you're doing professionally, where you're planning on going, and then having a look at what your income needed to sustain your lifestyle looks like, and then see how many properties. Because sometimes I always find that people think what they need to live is this crazy goal, like they need like 20 properties. It's actually sometimes you pick a few really good ones and keep the LVR safe. Like you could live a good life.
Yeah. Like, realistically, I could probably just pay down what I've got.
Yeah.
And like it already produces almost $200,000 a year in income.
Yeah.
Like, so if I just paid that all off, take your expenses out, there's 165, 170.
And live a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think this is where my ego does get involved. And I don't know if it's ego or ambition. Yeah, I actually honestly don't know. But either way, that part of me gets involved. Is like, no, you can do more than that. Like keep pushing more.
It's a funny one, isn't it? It's that dance in life, isn't it? Like there's always going to be more as well, right?
Yeah. What was that? I got told a story the other day about the Jordan Belford, and it was some guy, I can't remember who it was, and he'd just done whatever amazing thing, and he was at one of Jordan Belford's parties, like the Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
And this guy was all like, hey, like this painting here or whatever it is like that represents more than you've made in your entire career. And the guy's response was, I'm butchering this story, by the way, but I'm doing my best with it. The guy's response was, yeah, but I've got something that Jordan will never have. He's like, what's that? He's like, enough.
Oh.
And it's kind of true. But do you remember the opening line of that film? I made $48 million that year, and I was just so pissed off because I was $3 million short of $1 million a week. Like that's the way he looks at making $48 million. Like wonderful for the drive, but it's like that guy obviously wasn't happy. Yeah. And I'd much rather still have ambition, but chase it towards something that actually gives you the life you want, fulfills you. Yeah,
fulfills you. Yeah, I love it. Seems like it's all you're on the right path. And mate, just quickly, how did you get into the podcast realm? A lot of people want to start a podcast. Yeah. How'd you get into that? And how quickly did you realize, actually, I'm on to something here?
Not for a long time. I should probably only really realize that this year. I just enjoyed it. Like,
love it.
I was starting. I can actually show you videos on my phone later. What was it called? Oh, did you edit this, or is this just all free flowing?
Free flowing, yeah.
Okay, I should probably think quicker then. I can't remember what it was called. It was like Real Estate Talk or something along those lines. It wasn't that, but something like that. Oh no, Your Property Show. I think that's what it was. And I had all these TVs everywhere, and I was in my mum's back shed. I think I was just trying to convince myself that I wasn't living at my mum's house. And it was, it was so complicated. But because I had a bit of that film background, I was like, yeah, I can do all this. And I had one of my mates, Jack, come over. He originally started with me, and we just kept having technical difficulty after technical difficulty. And he was the one that actually suggested, he's like, hey man, how about we just strip it all the way back to audio and then slowly introduce other things? And I wasn't too much of a fan, but I was like, yeah, you know what? We're having that many problems. Let's just do that. And that's kind of how like just the podcast was born. And we got our first few episodes, and it kind of backed and forth for a little while. It wasn't consistent at all. Sometimes we'd do it each week. Sometimes it would be like once a month. And then he ended up having a few personal things going on. He was like, can't do it anymore. And I ended up, much like you, having the first solo episode. And I remember thinking in the back of my head that like no one's going to want to listen to a real estate agent. They're just going to think I'm on here trying to sell them houses. And it was one of the reasons why I never, like so many people even now are like, oh, were you a real estate agent? Because I didn't talk about it.
Don't talk about it,
I didn't want to like come across that it was all like me. And yeah, I just kept talking to people, kept inviting them. You're calling.
Yep.
I'm so used to my phone being hooked up to the Roadcaster.
Yeah. That's all right, mate.
All right. Yeah, and just kept talking, kept doing it, and then ratings started coming in. And I remember when we had our first 1,000 download month, that I was just like, that's incredible. Like, this is nuts. Like 1,000 people. I don't know if it's people, but you know.
Yeah.
Let's just say that 1,000
100%.
people are listening. Wow, this is really cool. And then all of a sudden it started turning into 2, into 4, into 5, into 10, into now in like the 20,000 plus downloads a month.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is like something. And that's when I had the whole, like I said, more the epiphany of, if I can do this between 5 and 8 in the morning, what can I do if I really give it everything?
Gave it everything, yeah.
Yeah.
How did that feel when you're like, all right, I'm doing it full time?
I'm still getting used to it because it's only like 3 months. Like I've left the security of, I end up building my income at work to around sort of 140, 150 grand a year. So like that's not like millionaire status, but that's certainly very reasonable money. And it was a hell of a lot more than what I used to earn.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And so I had a few people saying like, what the hell are you doing? Like you're saying no to $150,000 a year income to chase like a podcast. But it was like, why not? Like there's potential in that.
Yeah. And that's the thing why I love property and property investing. I feel it feels a lot more secure having a little bit of passive income on the side supporting it, right?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm still very aware that income could disappear at any point. Like my LVR is like kind of 65, 70, like it's reasonable, but that's not very low. So if rates do end up going crazy, and it always makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable when people are certain about things that have uncertainty attached to them. They're like, no, it's definitely not going to go above 5. And now I'm looking at it, it's like, we're already getting pretty close to that. Like, who knows? And I hope I'm really wrong with that. I really want to be wrong with that. But yeah, I've looked at that as it's a good buffer, but I'm not counting on it just yet.
Like it, yeah, 100%. And then just quickly on the podcast. So we spoke before, some of the guests you've had on the Pizza and Property podcast, been amazing. When it started getting traction, what was your game plan with the podcast? Like a lot of people got podcasts. I heard one that Alex Hormozy, I love his sort of content.
I watch him probably every morning in the gym.
How
now.
good is he?
He's so good.
I know. And he was sort of talking around podcast, and he was sort of saying he just stayed super consistent, and he judges people. I heard it. Yeah, he judges people on their time frame on what they judge something on. So he'll ask someone, "Oh, when are you expecting a result?" Like if someone calculates their time horizons in decades, he always says that. Like,
yeah.
So he's in it for 5-10 years, and he'll test the results from there. A lot of people in life will start a podcast or do something or like property investing, they'll try that and they're not seeing results in the first 6 to 12 months. He judges something on the time horizon. He can tell someone's successful in anything by the amount their time horizon is. So he was sort of saying he just kept doing the consistent habit, and then it wasn't until like year 5 or something that he actually got any traction whatsoever.
I remember that. I actually remember hearing his numbers, and his non-traction is still my like doing well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was still getting like 20,000 a month, but then it exploded into like 300,000 or 400,000 a month.
Yeah.
And it's you're right. It all comes from that being consistent. And
did you have a strategy with it when you were starting, or?
No, definitely not when we were starting. Or do you mean when I started going like, this is what I'm going to do now? Yeah. Well, so now it's about making sure that we continue to stay relevant. So I've just started a news segment now. So every Friday, we basically do what's called like, it's PMP news. So it's property investing news headlines, where it's a 2 to 4 minute podcast where we just take news headlines that are actually useful and relevant for property investors. So instead of like, I don't care if the M1's backed up, I don't care about this. I personally don't watch the news. I hate that show. But if I can take out the bits that are like, this is actually going to help me either grow a portfolio, or I need to know about this to protect my portfolio, cool, let's put that in there. And one of the reasons behind it is because a lot of our podcasts are very topical. So it might be something like, the one that always comes to mind is one I did years ago with Peter Kalousos, which was the 25 steps in subdivision. Great episode. Like, Peter's awesome. But if you just want to learn about how subdivision works, you can listen to that episode, go, that was a great podcast, and just continue living your life and go away. Like, there was no reason to come back.
Yeah.
So by providing something of value that people could consistently go, oh yeah, no, I'd listen to that each Friday on my way to work. That's a part of the strategy. Point. Yeah. To
like it.
Get people coming back.
Yeah, I like it. And angles with guests, and like, you've got some really good guests over the years that you've been running it. Did you always strategically think, they would have a good property story, or?
Not in the beginning. In the beginning, we didn't have any questions. We didn't have anything. We'd just chat with people. And we used to actually hold bits of foam above us because we were doing it in a tin shed, and it would rain sometimes, and you'd know about this, and you could hear the rain on the roof. So we'd hold these bits of foam. It didn't work very well. If you listen closely in earlier episodes, you can hear it. But yeah, we'd just talk with people. Yep. It was like, hey, they're cool. Let's call them and see if they'll say yes.
See if they'll. Yeah, I love it. And gathering, you've spoken to so many of the top investors in the country. And I can vouch for that. I listen to your podcast. There's some really high level investors on there. Key takeaway for buyers after chatting to some of the best investors in Australia on your podcast, or the world.
Yeah.
Any key takeaways or habits or anything you've really learned or solidified as like, hey, that's something I'm always sticking with me that I'm noticing with some of these best investors from interviewing so many?
So I've got a few. I'm just thinking about what kind of order to put it in. Work ethic. If you don't have the work ethic, if you're expecting to build something extraordinary and you're not willing to put in an extraordinary effort, just stop. Or earn lots of money and pay someone like yourself to do it. You know what I mean? Like you if you're wanting to build something big, you got to put in a big work ethic. And I think I've talked to a lot of people, and this even comes back to mining days. I still remember a mate of mine, Trini, good dude, but I came back after earning $200 a week to starting earning like $250 a day, I think it was. And I was just the richest man in Babylon in my head. And I was buying whatever they Smirnoff Blacks left, right, and center at the bar. I was like, yeah, Milky Bars are on me. And he was like, oh, how are you doing this? And I explained to him 12-hour days, 14 days straight, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, don't want to do that. It's the same with property investing. If you just want to buy one, that's amazing. That's really good. But if you want to really scale, you have to put in the work. I think
100%, yeah.
The second thing would probably be actually making sure that you've got discipline in your life, because that discipline is that's going to go through so many different avenues, because it's going to go into savings, it's going to go into consistency, it's going to go into when things go really bad, because they will go bad, you keep going as well. Like, it's so easy to go, oh, this is bad now. Interest rates are going up. I'm going to go check out what's happening on the ASX instead. It's like, well, no, like, be disciplined enough to stay that consistent time. I think those are probably the two big ones. I could probably keep talking about this, but those are probably the two big ones. Yeah.
Has there been any pieces of advice that have really stuck with you from any guests that you've had on the show?
It's like 270 of them.
Yeah. Putting you on the spot there.
I'm honestly not sure. Like not a big one that really stands out. Like I'm sure there's tons, but a realization that I did have a little while back though was that every single one of them was a business owner. No one was PAYG.
Interesting.
Like I've had PAYG people on the podcast, but most of the time, I think Adam Maney's probably the only one that had got into like the 10, 12, 13 sort of rentals that was still PAYG. And even then he might actually own the business. But most people that had smaller portfolios with the PAYGs, really large, they're business owners.
Interesting. Really interesting there. So one of the key things you learnt after chatting to, some of Australia's top property investors was the bulk of the ones with the bigger, solid portfolios were generally business owners. Is that right?
Yeah, because you got to be able to show the bank. Like, the more you can prove you don't need them, the more they're happy to be there for you. Like, if you can show them a large income, you can build a successful business and say, hey, I've gone from earning 50, 100, 150, whatever it was, to now I pay myself a $250,000 dividend every year, a $400,000, whatever your business is producing. Of course they're going to give you more money. Like, as long as those expenses and everything, like, there's more to that. This is not financial advice. Please take it a bit of professional financial advice. Yeah. but yeah, like it just makes sense.
Yeah. Have you heard of that book, Cash Flow Quadrant?
Yes.
Yeah.
Read it a long time ago, but yeah.
Yeah. That's what the book that made me jump into becoming a business owner.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I was sort of capped at that property number 4, same thing, and PAYG, and sort of
stops
it made sense. Yeah, it does. Yeah. So that's really good to know. Like, in terms of it sort of solidifies what I was thinking back then. So that's interesting. And the book now. So what's this book you're working on right now?
So the book is called 10 Ways to 10 Rentals.
10 Ways to 10 Rentals. Okay.
It's a bigger project. So I'm already like, we're advertising, not advertising, but like sort of sharing the journey of creating it with people. I've already got heaps of people going like, hey, like, how can I buy a copy? And it's like, this is probably going to be like 6 to potentially even 12 months away, because there's a few different publishers we're talking about. We're not exactly sure on the production route yet, but it's a big project. It's going to be a podcast series, a book, and also a bit of a video series.
Wow.
And there's a few different reasons behind it. One of them was just a personal, not a pet peeve, but I'm going to go with that just because I can't think of a better descriptive, is that there's a few people out there that are like, this is the way that you do it, and every other way is wrong. It's like, well, that's not right. Like, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So how about we talk to 10 different people from 10 different backgrounds, 10 different parts of the country. Actually, not 10. There's a few, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
But how they've all built their portfolios.
Interesting.
And it's showing people that like some of them have developed their way there by making deals and didn't even have that much money, but then they did it through JVs. Some people like myself have renovated their way there. Some people actually have had higher incomes, but they had no time, so they buyer's agent their way there. And it was like, hey, this is how, if you're a young entrepreneur or just an entrepreneur in general and you have no time, don't think investing's off the cards. Here's how you do it. Like, it's about fitting to all these different molds. And the other reason was I find that like so much value comes from the podcast and what we're producing, but there's these parts that I can't show people, which is all the parts that after the recording, like, you know exactly how it stops. Like, you've been on the show before and it's like, okay, like rolling on sound, blah, blah, blah. And then I stop everything. It's like, hey man, were you happy with that? And you have a bit of a chat and you still get gold out of people then.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's the gold. They're like, oh, I don't really know if I should say that.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way or an illegal way or anything, but it's like, there's still a lot of privacy that comes into building a portfolio. And being able to actually really dig deep into what was your serviceable income at your time? Like, what kind of emotional setbacks did you get? Like, what are the real things, those nuggets of gold? And convincing like 9 other investors around the country to go, can you share all of that? Can you share like your entire portfolio in intimate detail? This is where I really think the value is, to be able to see, how does 1 link to 2? How does 2 link to 3? And who did you need to actually become to build that? And that's what we've been doing for the past, 10 days now.
Unreal. Yeah. And the book's going to be called, so 10 Ways to 10 Rentals.
10 Ways to 10 Rentals.
And you're looking at maybe a 6 to 12 months project, and it could come out kind of next year.
Yeah, all depends on how we go down the publishing route.
Unreal.
But,
I like the idea. I really do. It's like you're the modern day Tim Ferriss, really.
I would take that as a massive compliment. Thank you. Yeah.
It's got that Tools of Todds. Have you seen that book?
I haven't read it yet.
Mate,
it's gigantic.
It's like that.
Yeah.
And it's all his notes from interviewing like all these thought leaders in the world.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what a great idea. Like he sits in front of some of the best minds in the world and he's just a mad note taker and he's just jammed it in this book.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a bit of a similar one, segmented to property investors. That's when you were telling me, I was like, I love it. I think it's unreal.
On the Tim Ferriss note, just quickly, something that actually helped me get the confidence to leave work as well and do what I'm doing was his TED talk on fear setting. So just in case if you're listening to this, like, and you're thinking maybe I want to make a big change, Google TED talk, Tim Ferriss, fear setting. It's absolutely brilliant.
Interesting. Is that the one he talks around
Stoicism?
Death? Or no, Stoicism.
Yeah. I think he talks about to kill himself in the van because he suffers from like bipolar and depression.
Right. Yes.
Well, he's got a lot of demons, and I think it just makes it all the more impressive what he's achieved in his life.
Yeah. Unreal, mate. And just lastly, before we wrap up, what's next for you? Like, where do you want to go professionally and in Todd's life right now?
Just keep working on the podcast and just keep making it the best property investing podcast that I can. I just want to be able to, like I've said to a few people, one of my goals is the way that, like I've been talking with Steve McKnight just recently over Messenger, like the way that his book changed my life. I want to be able to produce a product or a service like we're doing with the podcast or with the books, that one day someone can send me that text and be like, hey man, like I'm now here because of like all the stuff that you put out there. Like that will, that would be an amazing feeling.
No, that's unreal. Sounds like I can see it in you. You got the desire to get there as well. I think,
absolutely.
I think you got it for sure. Well, mate, thanks so much for coming on. I just got to acknowledge you. Firstly, I love the journey. I love the property journey. That's unreal. For anyone out there who needs inspiration, who might be on a lower income or thinks property investing is not for me, take a listen to that sort of story there. And it's allowed Todd to get into something that he's genuinely enjoying. Secondly, I really like the fact, and this is I'm really big on as well, is there's always going to be more. There's always more. There's always more. You got to really know where you want to go, why you want to get there, what's it going to take to get there, and understand when you do get there, there's always going to be more. Like, when will you be fulfilled, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, unreal. And mate, what we'll do, we'll just finish with our Fast Five. Crossy usually hits them off. Yeah, first thing that comes to mind. I'm really interested in these ones because you are a bit of a property man. So first thing that comes to mind, any location, any dwelling type. So this isn't, the servicing's through the roof here. So you can go to the bank and get whatever you want, and we're going worldwide, wherever you want, wherever you think.
Oh, honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is a deal. I don't care.
Look at that. So the first one is, where would the holiday home be for you and your partner? You got a partner at the moment? You're saying?
Bianca and I. So I asked her to marry me in Bali.
Congrats, mate.
This sounds super wanky, but we've actually been looking at chateaus in France, in the south of France.
Yes, nice.
We both speak French, and
wow.
It's just something that it's nowhere near as expensive as what you think. You can buy these things for like 400,000 euros, which is probably like $650,000. And we've just been playing with this little fantasy of, because I've been training to be a pilot. Yep. That's a whole nother thing. This is Fast Five, sorry. Chateau France.
Chateau in France. Whereabout? Is there any suburb or?
No, not really. Just the south somewhere. But
love it.
I like the south because that way we could fly to Spain or to Italy, or it just opens up Europe a little bit more.
You're always smart with your investments. I like it. Next one's a little, it sounds like you've been getting on this train, the cash flow, but a limited budget, cash flow, like a blue chip investment worldwide. Where do you reckon?
And I don't care about the cash flow?
Any dwelling type. Nah, you're looking for solid, just a passive income generator.
Passive income generator. I'd probably go commercial.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard now because there's such yield compression out there. But either commercial or a bigger block of units. Like those motels.
Yes.
Look to be incredible for cash flow. probably get something in a really good location that was like a 30-40 roomer that you could afford to put on management.
Yeah, and just have it running, eh? Oh,
Yeah.
jeez. Every time I see them, I live on the Gold Coast, and I see them old motels,
Yep.
corner block, like ugly as dog, and you just walk past and you're like, man, that'd be good cash flow. Like you do them all up a little bit, and I've seen a few people doing it. Like they refurb it, mate. It's great play, I reckon. Hey,
yeah,
but yeah, obviously a different lending strategy with commercial and
absolutely
whatnot. So, mate, good choice. Bucks party anywhere in the world.
So I asked Bianca to marry me, and I actually don't want a Bucks party. I actually just ticked over 1,000 days sober last week.
Good
I
on
don't
ya.
drink anymore, so like because I went too hard. So yeah, I'll pass.
Yeah,
I'll probably just
All
go
right,
skydiving with a few.
yeah.
friends.
I was gonna say, yeah, like something like what about where would you go skydiving?
If it's anywhere in the world, Dubai over the Palm Island.
Okay, so it sounds like a little sneaky apartment in Dubai, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
With green tea and
Yeah.
I like it. And mate, future wife, I don't know, kids on the cards or
yep, absolutely.
Where would the family home, forever home be, you think? Like after this journey, Pete's and Properties pumped. It's done its time, mate. You've sold it off or whatever you've done with it, and the book's gone wild. Mate, where's the retirement place, you think?
Honestly, like just where we are. We live in Mile End in Adelaide. I'm super happy with it. Like I could see myself, no matter what level of success I end up sort of getting to, being very much like, not to compare myself to Warren Buffett in all those ways, but just in the do what makes you happy way. I'm happy at home. Like it's surprising. One of the things that actually makes me happy is one of the things that I wouldn't like about it as a real estate agent. Like we're in a 1920s bungalow and it's beautiful, but we're near a flight path. But because I love planes so much, I enjoy sitting there watching them come in.
Yeah.
So I actually really like that.
So maybe a little upgrade on the street and closer to the flight path, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. We'll just move to the runway.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. And lastly, key tip out there for buyers in the market right now.
Right now, spot the deal. There's always a deal to be had, and if things do go tricky, don't stay with the pack and go, oh wait, spot the deal, because most of the time, and after the 10 people that I've just spoken to, almost everyone has built their portfolios in down markets. So just spot the deal.
Love it. What do you think constitutes a deal? Like, what are the key things you think would constitute on a deal front?
Different for everyone. For me, it was add value, certain yield, and it fit within the budget. Like it's like there's no point being like Mr. or Mrs. like Vaucluse and knowing everything about that area. If you're earning 90 grand a year, you're not going to make it happen. So it's got to fit your budget. It's got to make sure that the yield is actually what you want. And again, for me, add value, but I think everyone should really have at least that opportunity, because then whether you exercise it or not, well, at least it's there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can recycle that equity, baby, and
Go again. Yeah.
Love it, man. Love it. Mate, inspirational story. Really love that one. Where can we find you? Pizza and Property Podcast, is it?
Pizza and Property, yeah. iTunes, Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, IG, everywhere.
Great potty. Big fan.
Thanks, man.
Big fan, man. So keep up the great work. And, mate, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Matty.